Hungry Trilobyte podcast would like to start by acknowledging these fine conventions.
SoonerCon. Central Oklahoma's longest-running pop culture convention is back. SoonerCon 31 is scheduled for June 30th through July 2nd, 2023, in Norman, Oklahoma. It promises a weekend full of tabletop gaming, cosplay, and appreciation for literary sci-fi as well as TV and comics. Visit SoonerCon.com for more information. The Hellmouth Convention. The Hellmouth Convention is designed by fans for fans, with the aim of harnessing the power of fandom to raise money for charities. The Hellmouth Convention celebrates all fandoms, but particularly things like Buffy, Firefly, and Dr. Horrible. Like the Hellmouth itself, things gravitate toward it that you may not find anywhere else. The next event is scheduled for June 9th through 11th, 2023, in Los Angeles, California. On mic today, we have Shylah Addante. How you doing this evening?
Hi, it's great to be here. I'm really happy we could finally connect.
Likewise. I was so excited. I followed you on Twitter for a while, and then I find out coincidentally that a project you did way back when is going to be on my favorite TV show of all time, MST3K. And I could not help but reach out and say, hey, what's going on? Can you tell me more about this?
I mean, I can tell you as much as I know, because
Sure.
It was a surprise to me too when I found out. I was actually at work, and one of the guys down the hall came in. He was like, "Did you know?" And I had just started this job. He's like, "I don't want you to think I'm weird, but when we hired you, I Googled you, and I know that you were involved with the production of this movie. Did you know it is slated to be on Mystery Science Theater 3000?" And my mouth dropped open because, like you, I've been a fan of the show forever. It was pretty definitive in my high school days for me. And it was just wild to hear that, something that I had a hand in is going to be on one of my favorite platforms.
And that's such a great response, because I know a lot of people who would not have that reaction if they found out that's where their life's work, well, not your life's work, but a great passion project wound up. They would feel offended, they would feel put down, but you got happy about it?
Oh, super happy. I mean, I don't want to say that it's, a badge of honor, but really for me, it is. One, it's, no publicity is bad publicity, right? So just having your work out there and getting noticed is really cool. But the authenticity that went into making this movie, like, I feel like when I was reading a little bit about it and people saw, that it was a mid, 2015, 2012, I don't remember the year it came out, film, and I saw people getting a little grumpy about it being, a modern film. And, the show's always really dug into those kind of cult classics. But I think the through line is that what I like to see featured, and I think they do a really good job of doing with the show, is finding films that were made from an authentic point of view. We didn't go into it wanting to make Sharknado and make something that was outrageous and just to poke fun. Everybody who was involved, from my husband and I who wrote it together, to the actors, to the director, it was made with all the best intentions to put something together that would hopefully bring people joy. And whether it was joy through that initial experience of seeing it, or joy through busting a gut and watching people poke a little fun at it, to me, it's the same end, that at the end of the day, we're putting a smile on someone's face. And I think that's the highest mark.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think you're on the right track there. The thing I tend to point out about movies on MST3K, all of them, is that they tend to come from a place of whoever made this movie wanted to put forth the best movie they could make. There's a genuineness, there's a sincerity there. And that's not the case for a lot of the modern movies we see come out of YouTube and so forth.
Yeah, I agree. And, the wanting to make a splash sometimes for the wrong reasons. And I don't mean to shout out Sharknado, but I think that's a great example of a film that was made to really poke fun at a genre and kind of be outlandish, and that was its point in existing, and that wasn't the point of what we put together. So I appreciate you recognizing that.
Sure. Like, just I haven't seen the movie, full disclosure, and
Mhm.
that there's an intention behind that because right now the movie is available on Amazon Prime, if I understand correctly.
Yes.
Anybody who wants to see it right this second can go ahead and do so. I'm deliberately holding off to watch on an MST3K because I just really want to experience it that way.
Yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And then I will go back and watch the original. There might be some cuts in there that I'd like to check out. But where was I going with this? The point is, whoever sat down and made this movie, you and your husband and the actors, looked at this and said, I'm really hoping one day somebody watches this movie at Christmas and gets a little happy feeling in their heart.
Exactly.
I don't know how wide that audience you thought it would be, but that was your intent.
And it's going to happen. I mean, I'm hoping that it already happened, but you know, like I said, whether the joy comes from that initial viewing or you're going to get the joy of this communal kind of poking fun viewing, I think it establishes the same end. It's bringing a little happiness into the world in a time where some days it's in pretty short supply.
There's a phrase that we used to say when I was a kid, and then we're roughly the same age, I think. So when you were a kid, that movies are magic. That you don't know what you're going to experience when it starts, and you take that ride. And I don't think we say that enough today. I don't think we give ourselves the ability to just get lost in a story and see where it takes us.
Yeah, there's so many, my husband and I are both big fans of the MCU. So we've seen every Marvel movie, every TV show. But I remember those initial viewings, like going into Iron Man 1 and not having any kind of expectation about what that movie was going to be, and just going along for the ride and being completely like enchanted and blown away by this world. And not to say that you still don't have that experience, but now, there's so many other expectations that are built in when you go to watch a Marvel movie. What are they hinting at? Where are the Easter eggs that I need to be on the lookout for? And you still have that pleasant viewing experience, but it's not it feels like it's almost some work you need to put into it now, because there's all of these strings attached to it. And I think that's kind of indicative of a lot of films or franchises that are coming out, is that it feels like there's a lot more we have to engage with and do, and it's really hard to just get lost in a film for me anymore, because there's homework, it feels like.
You're hitting me pretty deep here, because I love film a lot. I really enjoy the experience of getting into something, and it is harder these days, especially with these big budget movies. And I remember when the original, well, I don't remember when the original Superman came out because I wasn't born yet. But I mean, I got into that movie at a very, very young age. I've watched it probably once a year, every year since. And the idea was, at the time, you were just amazed that you could believe he could fly. The effects had just gotten to that point where it actually worked, and you didn't feel like, oh, there's the string there, there's the heart. No, you got it. It worked. And now you're down to the level of, are there enough bolts on Iron Man's armor? Or it's like you are so into the minutia that you're checking off a list of things they should have included. And that's great for a lot of reasons. But the simplicity of just saying, I believe this, is gone.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know necessarily if I should want to have that back, but I do.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if it's a loss of innocence type thing, where movies are just more inherently magical when you're a kid. But I think that the state of things has changed. We're putting a lot more expectation, a lot more financing behind single platforms that need to perform in order to make that money back. I just, thinking back when I was 12 years old and I went to the video store and rented A New Hope, and came home and had no idea what to expect going into that, and was just, I remember laying like upstairs in bed with a VCR to TV about 6 inches away from my face, just entranced by that movie. And I think about my recent Star Wars experiences, and it's just, there's expectation, and there's fandoms that come along with things now, and there's so many hopes and dreams that get pinned on films before they come out, and expectations that somebody's always going to be disappointed. And when you go into something having no strings attached and no idea of what to come, I think you're just more open to the experience.
Yeah. Like, for example, I am a huge fan of the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Mm-hmm.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. But I love it because, like you just said, you had no expectations. You had no idea what you were getting into. It was just a fun way to spend 90 minutes and just be constantly surprised.
Mm-hmm.
And if that were to try to happen today, people would just absolutely lose their minds because it hadn't fit into this preconceived idea of what they should be seeing. And I'm not saying it's a great movie. I'm not saying it was a success. I'm saying it was a good experience.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Great movies don't, that doesn't always align. It's not a Venn diagram that always overlaps. You think about something like, yeah, Schindler's List is a masterpiece, but it's not an enjoyable experience to sit down and watch it.
No.
Or you have a movie like the Super Mario Brothers movie, or God, growing up, Labyrinth, where, yeah, probably not on anybody's number one list, except for my friend Shelby, who is a diehard David Bowie stan. But my God, it was a wild ride from beginning to end, and I enjoyed every minute of that movie, and still it holds a special place in my heart. And maybe it's because the how old I was when I watched it, or the experience through it. But I think that's something to be said, that something, it doesn't have to be good to elicit that emotion in you.
Mm-hmm. A week
good,
or two
in quotes.
Yeah, a week or two ago, Olivia Newton-John passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that came out of my mouth was, I really genuinely liked Xanadu. And everybody in the room looks at me and I'm like, look, it's a fun movie. It's dumb, but it's fun.
Well, and I think that's what, to bring it back to Mystery Science Theater, I think that those are the films that they're picking, is not necessarily the ones that were, the banner films of their time, but they evoked an emotion in somebody who was making them or watching them, and it's a real authentic experience. It's incredible to me to think about that disconnect, because I really hadn't thought of it before, and it's kind of wild to think that, yeah, quality doesn't dictate experience. Experience is all in the viewer. And Xanadu was lovely, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah. This is why I wanted to reach out to you, and why I was so excited to be able to have this conversation. Is that I wanted to grab somebody right at the moment we're at now, where so many people, like, the people who made the Godzilla movies or who made I Accuse My Parents are either long gone, or their Mystery Science Theater experience happened when they were in their 80s and 90s, and it was just so. I'm saying it, that you can see where your movie is going in film history.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering if there's something, looking back on your experience making it, that you could say, yeah, that makes sense. I can see it was a precursor. It was an omen.
Yeah. It's a weird thing to think back, because it was such a strange connection that kind of got us involved with the production in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been writing, this is a long chain of events. I was working at a Hunger Games fan site, and the director of the film, John Lyde, had been making these little kind of spec fan videos of scenes from the books, and I wound up writing a couple shorts for him through that. And then he would just send me emails with ideas. Hey, I want to do. I'm thinking of a movie about what was ponies and pirates. Can you write a spec script for me? Sure. All right. And so it would be an email every now and then with that idea. And then that's how the Christmas Dragon came in. Hey, I want to make a Christmas movie, but like Lord of the Rings with a dragon. And, I big fan of Lord of the Rings, always have been. It sounded like fun. So we sat down, we wrote it out. And I think probably in the writing process, we kind of knew that there was something, it's a weird combination of elements. And I think those are the ones that are are going to get you on this trajectory. You know, you make something a little weird, it's either going to go over really, really well, or it's going to get a little silly. And I think this film definitely leans over to the silly side. It's also a family film. You know, it's made to be able to enjoy by an entire family together watching it. My husband and I didn't have kids at the time, so we were writing, you know, what we thought as elder millennials who grew up on a steady diet of like trauma in our children's films. Mm-hmm. So we were writing with that memory and didn't realize just how intense that was. My niece was about 5 when the movie came out, and she sat down to watch it with her parents over Christmas time, and like the first 10 minutes scarred her and they had to shut it off. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's probably a sign that this is gonna be a little bit different, because it's a different time, you know, different subset of viewers. So yeah, probably, and you know, spoiler alert, burning someone's parents alive in the first 5 minutes of a live action film hits a little different in the mid 2000s than it did in like 1992.
I was watching the end of the latest season of Stranger Things last night, and this is obviously something I am not going to show my 8-year-old child. And that was I don't even know why that thought came to me, that I would even try to do that. But I thought and like, wait a minute. I'm remembering watching Neverending Story, and the father is like verbally abusing his son over mourning his dead mom. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm this is basically the same thing, slightly less blood. It's that kind of tone. And I was like totally okay with watching it.
Yeah, well, we think we were, but I mean, now we're all adults and, you know, spiraling into whatever hellscape we're heading into. You know, we thought it was okay, but maybe not for the next generation. But yeah, we didn't even give a thought to like appropriateness, because we're like, all right, no sex, no cursing. That's family friendly, right? Yeah, you know, not even thinking about like the other stuff that potentially, you know, harms a child's psyche. So I apologize to my niece, and I promised to pay her therapy bill in 15 or 20 years when she needs to recount that first traumatizing experience.
You know, I think you gave the kid some credit that she could handle it, and I give you credit for that. We got to just I mean, we want to be careful about what we show our kids, but as they grow up, they have to see a little more, and we don't necessarily want them to, but it's just part of the growing process.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, you give them what they can handle. And if you misstep there, you have a discussion about it. That's what we do with our kids. What did we watch with them? They're 5 and 3 right now. And we put the first Lord of the Rings movie on for them the other day. And I'm like, this is sweet, you know, Frodo in the Shire, and then totally like watched them watching the ring wraiths show up for the first time. And you could see the real fear. But it was all about having discussions in that moment about, you know, why is this scary? What do you think is going to happen? You know, but in the end, they loved it, and they were ready to see the second one, which was definitely too scary for them. So we're going to stick with Fellowship for a while. They didn't respond well to the Uruk-hai in that one.
Now, you mentioned Star Wars before, and, you know, huge Star Wars fan, obviously. Mine has gone through the original trilogy, very much delaying doing the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
Because and the reason being, it's very clear, is my biggest complaint about the original trilogy, if I could even have one, is that you never really got why it was so horrible to live under the Empire. And of all the failures a sequel trilogy might have had, that was their big success, is that you get why it's a bad thing to live under the Empire.
Exactly it. Yeah.
So, but again, part of that comes into, just like you said, it's different phases of life, growing up and seeing things differently as an adult than you do as a kid. And I'm kind of curious to see just to have a modern-ish movie on MST3K seems like so much fun, just because I think the post 2000 style of filmmaking is ripe for some analysis on their level.
Yeah, and I think that's ours. I think, from what I've read, is the most current film, and so, you know, you're going to get some of the oh geez, how do I want to phrase this? Not the highest quality CGI, which, you know, I think is kind of a hallmark from anything made post 2009, because you can give that criticism to, you know, the prequel trilogy. Everything is kind of a product of where technology was at the time. But I think you get to see that little snippet of, even though it's a film that's based in like a medieval setting, there's still like snippets of contemporary thought, what was important at the time, to the writers, to the directors. And I think that's going to be interesting to see, because you really do get like this little time capsule of what we thought was important at that moment. So I think that'll be really neat. And I hope we're not the last. I really, like you said, hope we continue to see these films, these niche films. I mean, with the rise of streaming services, it feels like there's just this host of new voices that are coming in to the movie market, that, you know, and again, it might not be everybody's like lifelong dream to have their show or their film end up on Mystery Science Theater, but having that light be able to shine on different creators, or creators who didn't have a voice, you know, in the era that we're so used to being showcased, I think is a really cool lens to look through. Because whether or not you agree that the movie should wind up there, getting to analyze it and really dig in and try to figure out what was going on behind the scenes for the writers, for the directors, for the actors, opens up a lens into that period of time. And we've covered a lot of time pre-2000, and I think it'll be really cool to see all of these new voices get that treatment too.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one thing that it's like the blessing and the curse of this era, because we have the streaming services. The good thing is that we are giving so many smaller creators just a chance to get out there. The bad thing is that chance can be measured in days, weeks, if you're lucky. It's like this, I don't call it an assembly line. It's just this stream of stuff that comes in and out constantly. And it's so easy to miss something interesting.
And this is a whole like level of like, it's almost historic preservation, what they're doing, you know, that these things that would be so easily forgotten or overlooked get this beautiful, silly spotlight shined on them in perpetuity. It really is historical preservation for films that wouldn't otherwise get that.
And we've seen that so many times with the older movies that would not be known today at all if it weren't for MST3K. People talk about, oh, they have Godzilla on there. Well, Godzilla is a timeless classic in its own right. It would have an audience no matter what happened to it. But what about Mitchell? And that's got a fairly big actor in it for its time, and still could have easily just been forgotten about completely.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, for people like you and I'm going to say, you know, elder millennials, because that's a term that's traumatized me, so I'm just going to lean in and use it. That introduced me to this whole world of film, and got me interested in, you know, movies that came before I was born, and brought me down a rabbit hole of, wow, that was a really silly thing that I just watched. I want to find more things like that. And then that tangent led me to, you know, this subgenre or this subgenre. And then, you know, in high school, I find myself watching, I'm trying to think of a classic, A Streetcar Named Desire. Like, I can draw a line in my head from watching these films on Mystery Science Theater to finally finding a love of classic cinema. There's a line there that I wouldn't have been able to draw without that introduction point.
And when you read things like the Amazing Colossal Episode Guide or the blogs of the people that worked on the show, you can see this amazing love of just the filmmaking process in general, Hollywood history. They're not watching this just to poke fun at something. They have a reverence for what goes into this, because they're all filmmakers of their own in some kind. Frank Conniff has been on the show. And I mean, just what I love to talk about was what it's like to just enjoy film as a fan. I don't even think I brought up the show that much.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think there's a level of like, meta-ness even inherent in the show itself. If you were gonna take one more step back and watch the show for, the things that we so often critique on it, plot and, acting and costumes. And you would say, wow, this is a pretty cheesy setup on a show. And I think that's just another layer that they don't take themselves seriously. And so it's a lot easier to swallow, the gentle poking, because you see that they're doing it just like the people who they're looking at. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, that we're all in this together, whichever side of the process you're on, whether you're the film, whether you're the MST crew, or you're the audience watching it all come together, that we're all in this place looking for the same thing. We want to enjoy a film on whatever level that is, and do it together, and do it in a way that is a little irreverent, but also I'm trying to find the right word. It's irreverent, but there's an homage there that I think underlies it all. There's like you said, a reverence that underlies it all. Yeah, we're gonna make fun of you, but we only do it because we love you, kind of thing. And I think that's a really cool way to go into film study and film review. And I really think that this medium has brought a lot of people into that scope who might not otherwise watch something with a critical eye, or watch something to look for a different meaning or a different experience. I feel like it sets people on a trajectory to have them explore film in a way that they wouldn't have otherwise.
I've been a fan of the show for 30 years, and just sitting here talking with you for the last half hour, something has clicked in my head here. It's like they're allowed to make fun of the movies because they are themselves creators. But at the same time, because of the format of the show, they literally are the audience too.
Mhm.
It's the one case where the two can actually meet. They are simultaneously creators and the audience, and we all benefit from that process.
Yeah, I mean, it is incredible to think that. I mean, just the uniqueness of this show, and the fact that it's persisted for so long means that they're doing something really special and really important. And I don't know, and I don't know how they must realize it, but I don't know that people tell them enough that this is something that not only gives a huge amount of joy to the audience, but also it really helps people find a creative voice. It helps them find a critical lens. It gives them this introduction to classic film that they might not have, that might have felt inaccessible otherwise. And I think that's so important for us to recognize, but also for them to recognize, and for the people who are critical of the show, that it's silly and funny, and it can really, I don't know, I guess if you've got a big ego and your movie winds up on there, it can maybe be a hard pill to swallow initially. But when you take a step back and realize that now your film is becoming this like whole new medium of enjoyment, I just, what they have done with this show is incredible. And I hope that they know that it's really been a cultural touchstone for a lot of people.
What's your favorite movie that was made before you were born?
Oh, geez, made before I was born. It's probably, I'm trying to think of the ones that have been really like impactful and influential in my life. And the one that like really rocked me it was Empire Strikes Back. I have this like vivid memory. I knew nothing about the Star Wars trilogy going in. My parents weren't Star Wars fans. It was kind of something I stumbled upon at the local video store, finding a cool box, and I'd watched the first one. And that gut punch of a reveal at the end when you find out that Darth Vader, and I know it sounds really cliche, but I had no idea nowadays because it would have been spoiled about 2 weeks before the movie came out, but having that visceral reaction. And I just remember sitting there and thinking, I want to make people feel this way. And I would, after that, I think I was like 11 or 12 at the time, my grandfather had one of those old like over the shoulder camcorders that weighed about 600 pounds. And it didn't really work right. Sometimes it would shoot in color and sometimes it would shoot in black and white, depending on how it was feeling. But I would borrow that and I would go out and just like shoot movies. I was in on the old, what was it, a Gateway computer, typing up scripts in like my notepad. And printing them out on a dot matrix printer and passing them out to my friends. And every school project I did was some kind of movie. And I think all of that came from having that experience by myself with that movie and just wanting to get other people to feel that way, wanting to be the locus for somebody else having that kind of experience. And that, I can look at that and then see my path all the way up to this point of just wanting to make something that makes someone feel some kind of way, happy, sad, scared, surprised. And it all started from that singular experience of that reveal.
Okay, that's an amazing answer. It truly is. And I was going for what it would take to dissect for the average person, not you, because you're a trained professional. This is what you live and breathe. But for the average person to dissect what The Empire Strikes Back meant to the world and how well it was crafted and the amazing, it's probably one of the top 10 movies ever in my mind, just because of everything you just said.
Mm-hmm.
But then to go out and say, you can have your choice between dissecting The Empire Strikes Back or The Killer Shrews. The Killer Shrews might be a more attainable project for most people.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where MST3K comes in, is they can say, we can give you something that if you don't quite get the words right, if you don't quite get why this works, that's okay. We're just talking about Killer Shrews here.
Yep, exactly. It's accessibility. It's all about accessibility. And that's what they bring. That's what this whole communal experience brings, is the ability to enjoy something, get into a little bit of dissection and critique and understanding, but in a safe place. Because at the end of the day, it's not Schindler's List. It's not Empire Strikes Back. It's this silly movie about a dragon that pulls Santa's sleigh. And it's okay to laugh and maybe not do more than that. It's okay.
Well, this is awesome. And I there's so many places I want to take this conversation here, but I also want to ask, where are you going from here on out? Do you have any projects percolating that we should keep an eye on?
Yeah, there's a couple things. So I am a published author, and it actually all ties back into this relationship that I have with Mainstay Productions, which is part of one of the production companies that worked on Christmas Dragon. Is they sent me a prompt, a one-liner, about 10 or 12 years ago now, that they wanted to make a movie about good and evil fairies. So I wrote a spec script that they passed around. It never gained any traction, but I retained the novelization rights. And so that book was published in 2020, Garden of Thorns and Light. So that's out there. If anybody with, a production budget wants to reach out about, turning it into the film that it was originally scoped to be, that would be super awesome. Let's see. And then I'm working on a new novel now about the tangentially based on the Three Fates. And I'm hoping that that one will be drafted by the end of the year, and we'll be looking for a publisher next year.
You've got a website and you're active on Twitter.
Super active on Twitter. My website, I don't think has been updated because I'm terrible. But yeah, I'm super active on Twitter. Feel free to reach out to me. It's at Jedi Skywalker. Like, obviously, Star Wars has completely shaped my life. That's been my handle since I was 12, I think, on AOL Instant Messenger. At Jedi Skywalker on Twitter. And I'm trying to think if there's anywhere else, but it's pretty much Twitter. I have an Instagram at Shylah Addante, but that's a lot of like pictures of my kids being cute, which is, there's a niche for that. But if you're looking for like spicy content or retweets, or me live streaming when I finally get to watch this episode, it'll definitely be on Twitter. So yeah, reach out to me there. I'm always down to chat and talk, and I have 5 followers, so follow me.
Awesome. Yes, all of that is going to be in the show notes on my website, aaronbossig.com. I'm going to make sure that I link to this book. And actually, I would like to read the book and watch the movie. The episode is going to be dropping in December.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say December 5th, December 3rd, somewhere in there.
But Christmas episode.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes. So once I see all that, I would love to digest it and circle back and talk to you again. You're welcome back on the show anytime.
Sure thing. And I'd be happy to. I think we're all just kind of waiting with bated breath till December to see where this goes.
Absolutely. Shylah, thank you so much for being here. I've had a great time. And again, I would love to have you back.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely.